Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. The Pittsburgh Steelers are fresh off a big win over the Cardinals. Pretty much expected because the Cardinals are not good this year. I think they're 3-8-1 going into the game. And the Steelers went out on the road. It's always tough playing on the road, not only in the NFL, college, any level of football. It's going to be tough to get a win on the road. They went out and got it done with a young group of guys. And I thought that was very important because you have a lot of rookies playing. Johnson, rookie, had that punt return for the touchdown, which was huge. And he's been coming on as of late. I think he wasn't as good the previous game, but this game he really showed up. You have him starting to mesh with Duck Hodges, and the rumors are that Juju is coming back this week. So you're going to have the team start to get healthy as you get into the final 3 games stretch of the season. So great showing, at least in terms of playoff positioning. So Matt, what are your thoughts on the game?
Overall, I was really surprised. I thought that was a game that they should have won, and I was surprised that they were actually able to finish it off. I thought going in that they were going to lay an egg, and it ended up being better than anticipated. To me, right now, I think I kind of see like Juju's missing for different reasons, for injuries, and it's like they're still managing to win. They're going without him. They're going without Bell. They're without Brown. Ben's injured, and they're just piecing it together. They're finding a way to win, and I do like that. Doing it the old Pittsburgh way. Special teams and defense.
Well, I'm glad you brought up special teams because that was one of the big topics that I wanted to focus on today. You had a coaching gaffe on Sunday. Late in the game, Tomlin called for a fake punt. Now, awful situation. You're up 10, fourth quarter. I don't know how much time was left. But you're in a position where you're playing the Cardinals. They kind of have an explosive offense, but not really. They have young guys on that team and a fresh head coach. Your specialty is supposed to be defense. Why are you trying to run the fake punt? And the one that you called was where the punter faked the punt and then was going to run with it because the offensive line realized it was a bad call from the sidelines. And in the interview, he said that everyone called it off. But I think the punter, he said he was 13 yards off the ball. He couldn't hear him. So everyone else pretended like it was a real punt. And because the fake actually called for him faking the kick, it looked like even all the up men and stuff that were blocking and were kind of in the field of vision, they thought he was going to punt it. They all turned. And to be honest, it still almost worked, as bad of a call as it was, if he was able to shake the 2 defenders that were there. And I thought, well, with that fake punt, they didn't get quite enough penetration to where if the Steelers blineman would have let them go and they would have ran past the punter, he might have been able to pick up the first down. So even though it was a botched call and a botched handling, he talked about how he faked the punt, he was looking down, and when he looked up, he ran into a wall of Cardinals. There was only 2 players there. So it wasn't really a wall of them. And if he would have kind of glanced up, which I'm surprised he didn't, he would have saw that the line wasn't blocking for him, and he probably would have been able to get away the punt. But he was so he was dead set on faking that punt that his head was down the whole time, didn't see what was going on. And to me, that's just poor coaching. You have a young team, you have a lead, and the Cardinals ran one earlier in the game, and they converted in a situation where they needed to. When was theirs? The third quarter, I think. Where they had the up man run it out on the side, I believe. And it was a position where Steelers, you have to be aware of that. So on you get out coached twice on stupid punt calls. And it really annoyed me. And whenever you're getting ready for the playoffs, luckily you got that done against the Cardinals. And who cares if you have some punt mistakes if you're able to win the game. But I wanted to point them out because you have a young team. Who are you surprising with these? You just punt. It was like a mail it in punt the ball away. There was still too much time. It really didn't matter. Punt the ball, hold them to a field goal, because even if you, like, let's say they tried to run it correctly and you still didn't get it, you're putting them in a position to score a field goal at the minimum. And I mean, what are you doing? It just didn't make sense to me. And a lot of people that are praising Tomlin, I saw a couple polls going up on social media and various sports sites saying that Tomlin might be the second best coach in the NFL behind Bill Belichick. I don't know. Does Bill Belichick do things like that? I mean, I don't watch enough Patriots games, but I don't remember him like calling weird fake punts when your team has a gigantic lead against an inferior team. If they had a lead against the Ravens where they were worried that, okay, Lamar Jackson's going to come down and score, I could see that. And maybe they wanted that on tape, so the Ravens were prepared for that maybe. I just don't get it, though. Like, what are you doing? You should be manhandling the Cardinals. Save that kind of stuff against the Bills next week. That's my thoughts. What are your thoughts, Coach?
Kind of thought the situation was a bad situation to do it in. And given where they were in the game, just win. Like, I think you pull out trick plays and you do some of that stuff when you're going up against teams that you don't stand a chance against, that you need to have something else to kind of give yourself a fighting chance. And I a lot of people criticize Lou Holtz, but I kind of liked one of the quotes that he had talked about, that if you have to rely on trick plays to win games, that you're probably going to lose. And Pittsburgh tried their hardest to lose, through game management again. And thankfully, we're able to overcome it in spite of those mistakes.
Well, first off, Matt, how many people are old enough to remember Lou Holtz? Like him coaching? Like what you remember? Like he was coaching what? South Carolina or Clemson? Which one of those schools was he coaching at when we were kids?
He was at South Carolina.
Yeah, when we were kids. And then
Where
you're talking
all
about
the old locked-up coaches go.
Yeah, but what about my man Steve Spurrier, one of the greatest coaches of all time, known for trick plays, trick plays. He had better success than Lou Holtz at the same school.
Because Lou Holtz built the school at that point.
Matt, please. I don't remember him beating Clemson 4 or 5 times in a row.
That's because you were an infant whenever he was doing it.
Which is my original point. Why are you bringing up Lou Holtz? I don't think anyone that listens to the show remembers Lou Holtz coaching. They remember him being on that ESPN show.
Someone does call in and just call you out on your nonsense. Don't be a dick.
Oh my gosh, so sensitive.
I bet he's on that list of ESPN's greatest coaches.
Well, we'll talk about that later. I can't believe you're plugging ESPN like that.
Yeah, I'll throw it out there. If you're going to make nonsense lists, talking nonsense, it just goes hand in hand.
All right, we'll bring that up later in the show. Best college coaches of all time. Let's get into Steelers-Bills on Sunday. What do you think the key to winning this game is?
Betting the under, because Pittsburgh will field goal them to death. Buffalo will throw screens and kick field goals. It'll be a 9-3 game.
Well, I'll say I don't know what to think of this Bills team. They are right there with the way the Patriots have been losing. They played the Ravens tough this past week. They only lost by a touchdown, and some grumblings on the internet about Lamar Jackson possibly being shut down, which would be crazy because the Ravens clinched. And it's the one thing that I would hate for fantasy owners. And it's why when I run our league, I make sure that the league ends early just so that scenario does not happen. Because you would hate to get to the championship game only to have your star quarterback sit out if you have Lamar Jackson. But the Bills seem to be playing everyone tough, although they lose to teams like the Browns. And I know the Steelers lost to them too. But it makes you think, okay, maybe they're not a good road team. I mean, their road wins are the Giants, Jets. They do have one against the Titans, which might end up being huge for the Steelers. And then the Dolphins, Cowboys, and they lost to the Browns on the road. So I'm hoping that there's enough inconsistency that the Steelers can win. If the Steelers win this week, I'm pretty sure they can clinch against the Jets the following week. for the playoff spot, for the wild card, which would be awesome. Because I hate going into that final week. Like last year, it seems like the last couple of years, but I could be wrong on that. It might just be a recency bias. But get it done. We played the Ravens last week of the season. I don't want that to be for a playoff spot, even if they're going to sit most of their players, or if they would do that. I don't know if they would do that in a rivalry game. At the least, you'd think that they might rest Lamar Jackson, but I don't know. Don't count those out. I wouldn't hedge my bets on that. I would just say win against the Bills. It's a big game. And then don't choke against the Jets. I mean, I don't know what else. I don't know what Bills team we're going to get. Josh Allen, he's young. He seems to be a little bit inconsistent. He can make the deep throws, make some great reads. Their defense seems to be good, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, which is typical of what Pittsburgh has been playing recently. So I'm actually pretty confident going into this game. I had a few weeks ago when I gave the final or rest of the season rundown, I had this as a loss. But it's a home game. Young team seems to be clicking, get some key pieces back, and I'm thinking the Steelers are going to win maybe by a field goal. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I kind of think that's the way it's going to be as well. I think that's what you're going to end up looking at is it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I'm wondering how much weather is going to factor into this. Because if they can squeak out another win, you have the Jets the following week, and at this point, it seems like the Jets are potentially looking to move Le'Veon Bell because he was ruled out for the game, and then they caught him out bowling. Like,
I'm shocked, Matt. Le'Veon Bell having off the field issues? What?
So they're already kind of moving in that direction of looking to see if they would get any value out of trading him.
I mean, I was worried going into the season. Well, actually, not really going into the season, but after the fumble to lose that game earlier in the year with Juju, and how he learned from Bell and Brown, and how the team has been playing without him. So I'm really hoping that he doesn't follow suit and become a locker room cancer like those other guys. He already does a lot of the social media posting and the goofing around and a lot of the commercials and stuff that I call out coaches and stuff for doing, because that takes a lot of time out of your day to go out. It's not like you're throwing like an hour together to go shoot a commercial. But look at what Peyton Manning did. He did all those commercials where he was like throwing the football. There was one, I forget, it was like a night show where he threw the one and it actually pretended to hit the kid. Like, you really think he was doing that in one take? Like, it's crazy. He probably spent days doing that night film and putting it together and pretending it was a live show. Hell, Tom Brady did it. He did it this past year, breaking the window. Like, that's not an hour thing where he's putting that together. So I'm hoping Juju, if he comes back, he's focused on the football and not the extra things that you have out there that could be causing trouble.
I will say he's out there promoting his brand and his social media image. And I think, like, to a certain extent, players in the league need to do that to offset some of their financial stuff. I mean, I know they're getting paid millions of dollars, but you're only in the league for so long. You might as well capitalize on your fandom. However, I think the big difference between what Juju's experiencing right now and what Brown and Bell were going through is that with Juju being out, they're still managing to win. Where when you had Bell sitting out and Brown doing his thing, that they were losing games at that point, and then they were kind of in the middle of a slide. So it went a little bit more that, hey, we're missing these guys and need these guys back. Versus now, where there's some of that outside pressure of, you better get back out there because you're going to get replaced by these younger rookies and people that are contributing and doing good stuff now.
And that's a good point, and I hope that's the direction it goes, by focusing on, hey, look how well these guys are playing without you. Because even when Brown was out, everyone was talking about how Juju couldn't handle the number one spot. So it was almost like the media was playing right into Brown's hands, like, hey, they need you out there. And then the start of this season, it was more along the lines of, can Juju be that number one? He goes down, and they're arguably playing better without him. I mean, that's you don't have the drops. I mean, we were talking about that a few weeks ago, how that was an issue, and that really didn't stand out to me this week. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at the stats, but when you have guys that are able to make plays, you don't need them. And that could give them a trade piece down the line that could flip it into a contender. Because as you've seen from the Patriots, you don't need star wide receivers to win the Super Bowl. You just don't. I mean, look at what the Eagles did. They had a bunch of cast-offs. I mean, you can't tell me Alshon Jeffrey's the number one. He's constantly hurt. Like, they're winning the Super Bowl with, like, Deshaun Jackson's, 38th career. I think he was there whenever they won it.
Ironic that you say that because I just saw Alshon Jeffrey's out for the year. So, good luck to those fantasy owners.
Matt, I learned like 5 years ago not to draft him. When the same guy's hurt all the time, like you just can't count on it. So I'm not shocked that teams can win without a star receiver because I think you've seen it going back to the T.O. days. It takes a special talent. Even T.O. can make it to the Super Bowl, play out of his mind, only to have the rest of the team choke the game for him because the quarterback's choking. Like, it's a team game. It's better to have guys that can fit on that team than ones that are just super stud athletes. Look at like Calvin Johnson. He couldn't get anywhere. Randy Moss never got a ring. Ocho Cinco didn't. I mean, these aren't the best guys. Randy Moss is one of the all-timers. So I just don't think that the Juju loss, he's coming back, but we'll see how he plays. I really hope that the locker room doesn't have issues from that when he comes back. The last NFL thing that I have, oh no, actually we have two because I almost forgot. I wanted to talk on the Texans-Titans game, but the first thing that I wanted to talk about, the New England Patriots, once again, filming the sideline of a game. And a lot of coincidences being thrown around out there. And so I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the Patriots sent a film crew to the Browns stadium. They got it cleared by Cleveland. And they said that they were going to film one of the scouts and what they are doing during the game. They were supposed to be focused on this scout so that they could do a web series on being a scout at the NFL or something like that. I don't know. I don't go on the Patriots website and look at their web series. Like, to me, that's not a big draw. But they have a team. They get it cleared by Cleveland. Suspiciously, the Browns are playing the Bengals. If you look at the New England schedule, guess who comes to town next week? The Bengals. That's who they play. So they're at the game, at the Cleveland Browns game, and their guy that's supposed to be filming this web series takes some time to film the Bengals sideline. Which to me, okay, kind of weird. Why would you be filming the Bengals? The Bengals aren't that good, but the Patriots also haven't been playing that well. The Bengals don't seem to just be tanking. I mean, they got to win. It's like, why are you getting one win? Are they going to play to win this week against the Patriots? Do they really need to scheme? And my thoughts are, maybe this is just the first time they got caught because it just matches up that they play the Bengals. And I saw their report came out and they said that, oh, in our defense, our guy was just filming for a web series. If you go back a couple of years ago, and I sent you the tweet, I'll put it on Southbound Sports, where in their actual defense from the first time they got caught spying on sidelines, they had coached the guy filming. They said, if anyone at the stadium asks you what you're doing, tell them you are filming for an NFL film, or they gave like 3 different examples, but that was one of them. Like, tell them you're doing a film project, which is their exact excuse this time. And I mean, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt, Matt, right? The Patriots, they've never done anything wrong.
They've never deflated footballs.
Hey, well, first off, the science disproves that. I think you don't attack Tom Brady. I think we need to focus our attacks on Bill Belichick and his filming, Matt. Because you know that's who's filming the games. It comes from the head coach. I think that has more of an impact than the so-called deflated footballs that everyone's touching. So, I mean, we can get into that argument, but I will say, Bill Belichick, I don't remember him winning much with the Browns. Is he the greatest coach of all time? Did he only start winning once he started filming?
Wow. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but you sound 100% like a conspiracy theorist.
Matt, I'm just putting the pieces together. You're playing the Bengals. You have film on their sideline where the initial report said that they could see the signals. Why would you need to film the signals? It's almost like the Houston Astros when they had that film of the guy smashing the garbage can in the hallway, 1 for fastball or 2 for a curveball or whatever he was doing. It's like, nah, he was just cheering. Like, we just randomly have a guy smashing the garbage can after the catcher signals. Like, yeah, they have the film. The NFL is going to review it. But how many other teams are getting caught filming practices, filming sidelines? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. How could you just keep getting caught and nothing happening?
Well, I think that's why. Because the first time that it happened, and there were the allegations, there really wasn't a lot. Like now you're getting to where you have the second offense of this nature. There has to be a drastic consequence, because this is now proving that this isn't a one-time oops. It's something more severe, and it's warranted more harsher discipline.
And I think you're right, because if you look at it, like I said, too many pieces add up. Patriots are stumbling. If they lose an unexpected game to the Bengals, they could be in jeopardy of losing home field advantage. Home field advantage has been very key whenever they make deep playoff runs. The defense hasn't been put together. Yeah, you can say about Tom Brady struggling and things like that. The offense not getting it done. What weapons does he have? Like, at some point, if your specialties defense, you've put all these key pieces together on defense, you should be able to win ball games by putting up whatever amount of points that you're going to put up, because that's what you built your team around. You didn't build your team around scoring crazy whenever you have who's on your offense. I mean, they're running Rex Burkhead out there still for a good chunk of their running game. It's like, what are you doing? How is that going to get defenses to respect your game? Like, it's just not. So right now, you're in jeopardy of getting passed up either by the Bills or the Chiefs that you just lost to. I mean, you hold the Chiefs to 23, whatever the offense puts up 16, you should be able to win that game. You give up 28 to the Texans. Like, really? Are the Texans known for having a dynamic offense? I don't know.
Until Watson gets hurt.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson possibly, but if your bell call is that you're a great defensive coach, why aren't you stopping these teams? That's what I don't understand. Like the Ravens, they had trouble with them. The Texans, the Chiefs, all of their losses, they have big points given up by their defense. It makes sense that they're just going to film a practice and put that together. Like, come on. I don't see any way around it. I think the NFL has to do something, because at that point, why not just have up? Like the Patriots, why they should just be banned from having any film guys ever. Because I know the NFL film has a crew. They should have to pay the NFL to have an NFL film crew out there to come do the filming for them. Want to film a scout? Sure. Pay the salary of the NFL films guy. And then it will come through the front office and we will send you the tape. Like, we're not going to have you contract with some random dude, because I saw that it was like, oh, it's a contract position. You're really telling me that if you're a videographer and you're like doing small time work like weddings and stuff, and you get a call and it's like, hey, we're the New England Patriots, come into our office. We're going to give you this much money. We want you to film this, but on the hush hush, because here's an NDA. You can't disclose this or you'll get sued, because you're a small time videographer. We really don't care about you. We're going to go out and I want you to film the sideline for as much as you can, but act like you're filming the scout. They could very easily have said that in a closed door meeting. Put the pressure on a contract worker that might not have as many big time clients, and they know that it's important not to lose this client because that pays for their bills for the year or two, one gig. I mean, it would be easy to sway people like that. That's what the mob was doing back in the day. Like, it's easy for them to build up targets whenever they can target business owners that need big clients that helped pay the bills. So don't count that out that it was just a contract worker, because I saw that being thrown out there. They had no affiliation with the team. It would be 100 times easier to sway someone that didn't. Some small-time film student that puts all his year salary into doing like a film at Sundance or something that doesn't take off. And they know that, so they're like, here, we'll just throw him some Patriots money, see what happens. Very easy. That's taking the conspiracy to the extreme, Matt. But until I see all the facts, that's how I'm feeling. Have anything else on it?
Well, I think it's easy to say we'll have them go through the league, because take any person that sits on that side of the stadium and you're carrying a phone with you. How easy going to be to plant 2 or 3 people? Hey, record the sideline. You don't need to have the super high lens camera. With a lot of the smartphones, you have enough technology that you can see what they're signaling from the other side and record it and send it without anyone knowing.
I would say that, but I would also say that my theory is that he's down on the field because they wanted the field level view of what their coaches would see on the sideline. So if you have like a different angle, or someone's in the thing, they're not going to get the best view. And you're going to have, like you said, a smartphone, which you can zoom in, but it's not going to be as sharp. Like if they're doing like something, like maybe he taps his arm or something in between calls, and that's what triggers the call. I think you have a guy down on the field, so he's at the same level as what the quarterback can see, and that's why they did that. But going back, like you said about hiring an NFL guy, why not just pay the Browns to have their guy do it? Their stadium. Like, I really don't think the Browns are going to help you cheat, right? Plus, they're playing the Bengals. Why would it benefit them to look at the calls for that week while they're playing them? Like, that would be the easier thing. You already got permission to send a guy. Just hire one of their guys. You would think that they would want to protect the integrity of the game by saying, like, okay, because if the Browns had a videographer, they could just send him to the other sideline so that he can only see the Brown sideline and film the scout. Case closed. Very easy. I mean, there are a bunch of ways you can get around this, and that's why I think there was some scheming here. Like, I just don't think, even if they came out and like the NFL, other owners were like, no big deal. Like, to me, it just doesn't add up. Too many coincidences. Last NFL thing I have, Texans versus Titans. I had said that I want the Texans to win, and I still feel that same way, even though they choked and they went out and lost to the Broncos. I mean, you give up 38 points to the Broncos. What are you doing? I said they had a dynamic offense. I don't know. They were in a shootout with the Broncos. They couldn't get it done. Broncos are awful this year. So, do they? I don't know. But they play the Titans twice to end the season. In between, the Texans play the Buccaneers, a team they could win. The Titans have to play the Saints. I have a feeling that the Titans are going to lose to the Saints because the Saints are playing for home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So that's going to knock them down one peg. If the Texans can beat the Titans this week, Saints get the job done. That could clinch the playoffs for the Steelers. That could clinch it, and it would be great. So that's what if you're a Steelers fan, that is your cheering guide. Cheer for the Texans, and then cheer for the Saints next week. Because right now, Texans and Titans are tied. Titans are playing Ryan Tannehill. He's out there running around. He's hitting people hard after interceptions. Like, what are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself. Mariota, what a bust. I mean, he was hot for a year or two. I don't know what happened. He fell off. So, don't cheer for the Titans. If the Titans win, you really still need to split with the Texans. And then you're hoping, like I said, this one's at home for the Titans, so they could win. But then you're going to be playing into the last week of the season. Plus, who knows what the bonehead Steelers are going to do against the Jets. Probably choke that game away. So it's much better if you just back into the playoff spot. I don't need the integrity of, Steelers won their way in. No. At this point, just get into the playoffs. If Hodges is going to be your guy going forward, get him some experience. That is what I want. Playoff experience for a young team that I think could get them hungry for next year. Do I think they have a chance to make a run at the Super Bowl? No. But is that playoff experience going to pay off probably in a few years? Yes. So let's get it done. Any thoughts you have on that game, Matt?
Kind of agree with you. I was actually thinking more in terms of, you were saying that the Bucs were beatable, and they're another team that they don't know if they want to be good or not. Bruce Arians came out in his post-game interview. They beat the Colts, which was a surprising win. They won 38-35, and he said, "We're finally starting to not accept losing anymore." And I just kind of laughed, because like, you're professional athletes. Why would you want to just lose? Like, I don't know. I don't understand people.
That one knocked the Colts out basically. So they could lose that game, and actually it would be awesome if next weekend both teams lost. If the Bucs and the Saints won the following week, then it really wouldn't matter. But I think the Steelers have the head-to-head right now with the Titans. So that's why I'm leaning towards them losing, because I think the conference record, are they tied right now or whatever? The Steelers had the tiebreaker before, but then they played an NFC team. So I think if the Steelers beat either the Bills or the Jets, I think they clinched that tiebreaker, although I'd have to look at it. That's assuming that they split with the Texans, but
that worries me if Pittsburgh backs into the playoffs, because then you're dealing with a Bucktober scenario where it's like, hey, we weren't supposed to do anything, and now we're in. And so then they get crushed in the wild card round, and they're like, well, we got everyone injured. See you in August.
Yeah, but this is a totally different scenario. They're not looking to cut salary, Matt. They're not going to trade their key pieces after making a run, like team for sale, like the Pirates would do. Like, come on. The Pirates are looking like they're going to trade everyone away, which would be awesome. I don't know if it's going to happen, but the Steelers, they can't do that. I think it's much better to get the young team, especially the defense, playoff experience, because that's big. Whenever you have a team that can get in the playoffs, get a few wins. I mean, hell, if they can get a win, maybe go to like New England or even Baltimore, a team that they're familiar with, who knows? You only have to win, 2 or 3 games to get the Super Bowl? So maybe. I mean, I think an AFC Championship game would be the limit, but who knows? I think that you're probably right. They would lose in the first round, but again, it all depends on matchups, where you're playing, who you are playing. Obviously, I think the Ravens would be a better matchup just because of the familiarity with their coaching staff. And if that all lines up, who knows? Let's see what happens. But that's it for the NFL this week. You got anything for High Tempo this week, Matt?
I thought I did. Let me double check my notes here. Oh yeah. While I'm thinking about it, Stoops did come to Florida State. Jeff Stoops with his wife Aggie. They donated $2.5 million to Florida State's football facility. So back on track with the renovations and the upgrade to facilities. So Stoops did come.
Matt, I saw a lot of people that were saying that Stoops was a done deal. And to me, I know I went on, was on this show? No, way before we did this show. I knew from going to the games, I was a student at the time, that Michigan was going to get Jim Harbaugh. Just from talking to different alums and stuff like that. And I would never have gone on Twitter and guaranteed it like a bunch of Florida State fans did. I saw the rumors that there was one staffer where they did a leak to, where they did like a fake story about Lane Kiffin being hired. And that's who the press conference was about that we talked about last week. And then, of course, that person went on YouTube or Twitter and put it out there. And then they were immediately fired from Florida State. Like, they definitely ran a tight ship. And I remember the tight ship around Harbaugh where people had a good feeling, but the tight ship was due to the NFL timeline because he wasn't really fired. He was like let go in the middle of the year, but his contract had to wait or something like that. So it wasn't like right now with Stoops. The thing that always stood out to me was he's with the XFL, people are predicting the XFL to die right away, he could just say no and opt out. Florida State pays him. That's it. He's there. He could have been hired 2 weeks ago. And that's the one thing that stood out to me.
That was the only reason why I thought maybe there were some legs to it, because with all the other stuff that was going on, the firing of Taggart did not make sense unless they were going to hire Stoops. And to me, that I don't know if that would have been the right move to make, but I think when you fire someone, the only fit that could have stepped in right away was Stoops. And I thought, well, if you have this general manager type role where it seems like you kind of get the best of whatever you want it to be, why you would step away from that to get back into the recruiting cycles and all the other stuff that goes in with being a college coach, it didn't make sense why he would want to do that job-wise.
Yeah, that's what I didn't understand. I understood how they announced that they wanted someone in the spot by November, which they missed the deadline, the end of November. And I thought, okay, maybe they do have Stoops behind closed doors and they don't want to like overshadow Odell. Maybe. I just didn't know, like, why wouldn't they announce it the day after though? And then they did the conference for Tuesday, that press conference. And I wonder who that was. Was it Franklin? Because I don't know. Was it Matt Campbell? I think Campbell's extension
Campbell's kind of matched up a little bit better. But like we talked about last week, with the criteria that they said of championship caliber mentality, Campbell didn't make sense because he wasn't competing for Big 12 championships. He didn't have the resume for it. I think he could be a good coach down the line, but he's unproven. I mean, even Franklin, he has the 1 year where they were Big Ten champs and were playing in the Rose Bowl, but I mean, he's not really proving that he can consistently get out of his own side of the division. So I wasn't crazy about what he's bringing, but you talk about falling in mud and coming out smelling like a rose. You know, part of the issue I think with Penn State this year has been their offensive coordinator, and he goes to Old Dominion, so they get another chance to bring on an improvement at that spot. And they have a whole slew of recruits coming in this weekend. So you have a great selling point.
Yeah, things are lining up for them. I think actually I have that on the next topic. Penn State getting snubbed by the Rose Bowl. I said going into that game that the way things were lining up, it looked as if they were trying to get Penn State into the Rose Bowl. And I'm honestly shocked that they stuck with Wisconsin over Penn State. Was it because of how close they played Ohio State? Because you're lying to yourself if you don't think the Big Ten picks their representatives. I mean, it goes all the way back. You can look it up. There was an article when Jim Delaney was hired, and Bo Schembechler was the athletic director at Michigan, and Delaney said that they were pointing the refs to try to get Illinois to represent the Big Ten. So if you search those keywords, I'm pretty sure you can find it on the Chicago Tribune, where Bo Schembechler called out Jim Delaney about meddling in the conference affairs. And if you don't think that's still going on, you're crazy. I mean, look at some of the close calls that have happened and who gets picked over who for bowl games. There's a reason Iowa always makes a higher bowl game, because they represent, they have fans in the stands. If you're going to look at, like, if there's a resume for the Big Ten and you have Iowa, Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, the Big Ten is 100% always going to send Iowa. They're going to talk to the bowl promoters. The bowl promoters know that Iowa's going to fill the stands. They're sending them 100% of the time. I think this year, the big one that stands out is the Michigan-Alabama matchup. I think that it was contractably written that the Citrus Bowl had to have 5 different teams in 7 years or something like that. And you can look it up, because that was the rumor for a lot of the predictions going into the end of the season, that Michigan was going to end up in the Holiday Bowl to play USC, because they had already played Florida in the Citrus Bowl twice. But guess what? You're telling you don't think that the conference stepped in and said, Yo, if you're putting Alabama in that bowl, pick Michigan over Minnesota. They 100% stepped in there. And, I mean, it was leaked the week before where they said that they definitely want the Michigan-Alabama matchup. I think we talked about it last week. I mean, you knew that was going to happen. Michigan-Alabama, that's why I thought for sure the Big Ten would have put Penn State against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. They must just think that Penn State doesn't have the depth this year to match up with them, and they're hoping Wisconsin can do it. Because the college football playoff poll, that's the one that decides. You're telling me that Wisconsin, with 3 losses now, and I know 2 of them are to Ohio State, is ranked ahead of 2-loss Penn State? Penn State's losses were to Ohio State and Minnesota, a top 25 team. Yeah, Wisconsin beat Minnesota, but Wisconsin lost to Illinois. Why are you giving them the better bowl game when they have the worst loss? Is it because they played in the weaker division? I mean, their best win is what? You could say Minnesota or possibly Michigan, but Penn State beat Michigan too. Not that impressive. So go ahead and say about Wisconsin representing, they've had their chance in the Rose Bowl. I really think that's a bad matchup. If you go all the way down, Ohio State stumbles into Clemson. Not a good matchup for them. Dabo had Urban Meyer's number. They destroyed him last time they played. It was like 33-0. So you have, that's an awful matchup for the Big Ten. Then you have Michigan, Alabama, I mentioned. Horrible matchup. Harbaugh can't even stop Jonathan Taylor running the ball. You really think Najee Harris isn't going to run wild and get 300 yards rushing? That is going to be a complete beatdown. Then you have Penn State playing Memphis. All the pressure is on Penn State. Norville goes to Florida State. So their head coach is gone. Penn State has to win that game because that's the most winnable game that the Big Ten has. Wisconsin's playing Oregon, an awful matchup for them. When have they ever stopped a high-powered offense like that? I mean, you're hoping that Jonathan Taylor can run the ball. And I'm going down the Big Ten bowl games. The entire thing, because the Big Ten meddles with their bowl games, it just doesn't add up. I think Minnesota plays Auburn. Horrible matchup. They should have been begging Minnesota to play whatever, like USC or someone out west. Because it's like, I'm pretty sure that's the thing. I'll look up the actual thing so I'm not messing up as I'm doing this because I'm going by memory. But you're looking at a thing where if you want the best schedule or the best chance for the Big Ten to get wins, I mean, wow, this was an awful pick. An awful pick. I don't even know if the Big Ten, if you're doing a bull pick'em, which we're probably going to have one here at Southbound Sports, so you can check that out at southboundsports.com in a little bit. I'll put some stuff out about it. We'll put in the link to the show, maybe in the reply. But if you're picking Big Ten teams, I don't know what to tell you. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, when I saw that you drew Bama, I remember one time where I thought, hey, Florida State should play Bama. I was excited for the matchup. And you know what happened after we played them? Our team went to shit. So be careful what you wish for. You got Bama. Make sure you have your next coach in waiting because they may beat him so bad that Harbaugh jumps back into the NFL.
Well, I think you had Brady Hoke play Bama in one of the kickoff games. Michigan jumped out to an early lead, and it looked like, holy cow, they have the explosive players on offense to get it done. They just didn't have the depth. And I think it ended up being like 42-14 or something like that. Crazy. Now you have Harbaugh that can't get players. I mean, he hasn't been able to get players to play in bowl games. He just hasn't. If you go back, the Jabril Peppers, was he actually injured? I don't know. He didn't play. Last year, one of the captains sat out. And I don't know if it's because he's letting them get ready for the NFL or if it's just an issue with him. You're hoping from Michigan that because of they're on their backup quarterback that you have an edge. I just haven't seen enough where once Michigan gets that deflating loss where they're out of the running for the playoff, the team usually folds. Harbaugh hasn't been a big motivator. It's not like it's Stanford days where he can get the team up to play some of these schools. I haven't seen it. He hasn't been able to get up to play Ohio State. Why would I be excited about that? So let me see. Another big bowl matchup. Pitt playing Eastern Michigan. Could you just gift Pitt a win?
No. That's you said about the Penn State's bowl with Memphis being a no-win situation. That's a no-win situation.
Oh, I know it's a bad matchup.
You're playing at Ford Field. You're playing in Detroit. No one wants to go to Detroit in the middle of winter. No one wants to go there. It's going to be cold. There's no experience. And then you're playing Eastern Michigan, yet to boot. So, like, you're getting absolutely nothing out. That is a Narduzzi Bowl.
They're playing. That's like basically a home game for Eastern Michigan. And it's not even Pitt in the ACC. Miami has to play Louisiana Tech. They're predicting Miami to lose to Louisiana Tech. How can that be good for recruiting for Manny Diaz? It can't. Then you have, I mean, the ACC, I thought the Big Ten matchups were bad just because of who's playing who on the top. But like the ACC must have the worst tie-ins for bowls. North Carolina's playing Temple. Like, okay, that's a lose-lose. So the three first bowls for the ACC are all lose-lose scenarios. You have Michigan State squeaking in to play Wake Forest. That could go either way. That could be the defining win for either conference. Until Clemson plays Ohio State. But then you have Iowa playing USC, which is a bad matchup for the Big Ten. Because let's put Iowa against the one team that they've always struggled with because they have dynamic receivers and Iowa plays that soft zone defense. Yeah, I'm sure that will work out well. I'd be shocked if Iowa won that game. Then you have, let's see, Penn State, Memphis, which we talked about. That's a lose-lose. Ohio State, Clemson, which they pretty much have to win. Ohio State, or what are you going to do? If they get into a scenario where Ryan Day, it looked like he put all his chickens into that Michigan game because they came out very flat against Wisconsin. So all the people that have been telling me that Michigan just can't compete with Ohio State, it's clear you don't know anything about football because he motivates a team to play Michigan. They practice for it all year long. They've talked about it. Urban Meyer's talked about it. That's why they almost lose to Maryland the week before they play Michigan. They lose to Purdue. They get blown out. They struggle before and after that game because they're putting all their practice time into that game. So now you have Ryan Day's first real test since that Michigan game against Clemson. I mean, what's going to happen? If he gets blown out and you're a recruit, that has to get people talking about, okay, if I'm down and I'm undecided and I'm looking at Ohio State and they've just got killed the last two times they're in the playoffs, Urban Meyer's not there anymore. Luckily, he didn't go back to USC because I think if Urban Meyer would have came back to coach college, that would have taken a lot of the top recruits away from Ohio State because they were his recruits. And I honestly still think he's been pushed out. I think that he talked about going to the Dallas Cowboys, which to me I would be surprised to see. But I'm not going to count him out. Getting back into the bowl games, Louisville plays Mississippi State. That's another lose-lose. What's up?
You missed my favorite bowl.
I'm going in order by the dates.
Okay.
Wait, when is the Cheez-It Bowl? Are you talking about Florida State?
No. It's the all-run versus all-pass game. Air Force versus Washington State, the Fighting Leeches.
Oh, I did skip that because I'm only doing Big Ten and ACC. But if you want to talk about that.
Absolutely. From an offensive perspective, it's going to probably be one of my favorite bowls of the bowl season because you have the Air Force Service Academy, who, following in line with Army and Navy, also run the Flexbone triple option. So they're like a predominantly all-running team versus Washington State, who, with Mike Leach being an air raid guy, just throws the ball a very high percentage of the time. So I think that'll be interesting to see which style of offense comes out. Is it the high throwing or high rushing attack?
That's one where Mike Leach, he was rumored to take other jobs. They locked him back up. I honestly think when Tracy Claeys quit, that was earlier in the year, that I think the team fell apart. I don't know if they fell apart before and that made him resign or what. But when Mike Leach has had a good defensive coordinator, his teams have been pretty unstoppable. Like last year, I know they didn't win the conference, but they're not pulling in tough recruiting classes. If he ever went to a place like Florida State where he could recruit a top 10 class, he would win a national championship. There's no doubt in my mind. I guess I would say this. Disclaimer, it depends on who the defensive coordinator is. Because you look at Ed Orgeron, when he hired his new offensive coordinator, that turned the entire team around. If Mike Leach was able to get in to a place where they can recruit top talent for once in his career, because he hasn't had it, and then he gets a good defensive coordinator, and I don't even think it has to be an outstanding defense that carries the team, just good enough, I think that they would win the national championship at least once in 4 or 5 years, because he has an identity. So, I mean, that's a shocking game. You're going to have one team running the clock out and the other team trying to stop it with all their swing passes and things like that. Getting back into the Louisville plays Mississippi State. There's no benefit to playing Mississippi State. If they lose, you hear the SEC chants. If they win, the SEC fans are always like, oh, you only beat Mississippi State. Wait till you play one of our real teams. It's the same thing every year. In the same type of scenario, Illinois has to play California. Can Lovie Smith get a bowl win? I mean, he has to. That's another one of the Big Ten. They're underdogs. I'm pretty sure. I don't know what the line is, but I saw that. I'm pretty sure they're underdogs. And I think that's one of the ones where the Big Ten could possibly win. Other than that, the ACC, Virginia plays Florida. That could be a big beatdown. Virginia Tech has to play Kentucky. Don't know how I feel about that one. Same with Florida State and Arizona State. You're going to the Sun Bowl, so it's a disadvantage to Florida State. You would hope if you're the ACC that you could have got Florida State to stay and play another team in Florida or something like that, try to get them a win, to try to build that program in the right direction. Instead, you're playing Herm. I just don't see Florida State winning that game.
In Arizona yet to boot, so they better pack extra Powerade, make sure we're hydrated.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. And it's gonna show what's going forward, but I honestly don't think it matters. Bowl games really don't matter. I think that might be.
But you know what? I think you're wrong there. The bowl games absolutely matter.
Yeah, you're wrong.
For these teams that make the playoffs, you shake your head all you want. But when you're getting an extra 2 weeks of practice with your team, and you're getting an extra 2 weeks to keep those kids on campus and keep them with the strength and conditioning program, all of those things matter. Having them around the program matters. And the deeper that you can keep them in and you can keep them around team activities and do that stuff, it 100% helps your program. And it makes that transition into your spring drills easier, and it builds for better teams. Because the teams that aren't making these bowl games, they're not consistently winning. They're having high coaching turnover. They're having high player turnovers or entering the transfer portal more. And I think that's something to keep an eye on, that with as many changes as you're seeing with the coaches, you should be seeing a lot more activity going into spring with the transfer portal and players moving around.
Well, I'll say you make some points, but I think you're talking about the old bowl system. This new bowl system, I don't think that matters because of two things. You are getting into teams that are playing bowl games that they don't care about. Almost every team makes a bowl. I mean, you're talking about teams that don't make bowls. You're talking about teams like Illinois, Matt. Is it really going to matter if they get the extra practices? No, because they're recruiting worse than MAC schools. So at some point, the university has to put in resources to get them to recruit better and try to get some focus on football. Look what Illinois did with Lovie Smith. Look what Indiana's trying to do, and that's the team I missed. Indiana plays Tennessee in what might be the most boring and worst matchup of any bowl game. I know you get Indiana looking for their 9th win, but like really, they put that game on January 2nd. And that's exactly what I'm going to think. I'm going to say, you know what I could really go for today? An Indiana football game after New Year's. I'm like, oh, thank God they put that right after New Year's. I couldn't hold back my excitement. Tennessee versus Indiana, that's must-watch TV. It's like, why are you having so many bowl games that is your primary game? Indiana finished, what, 4th? 3rd, 4th? In the division? Not even in the conference, Matt. In the division, yet they get rewarded, you can put that in quotes, with a January 2nd bowl game? Why? No one wants to watch that.
The Big Ten, and they're playing the SEC, and it just means more.
It does mean more. But I'm going back to my point about the bowl games. I think right now, when you said about it's helping teams with the bowl games, I think that needs to be looked at for playoff teams. This 4-team playoff, when you're getting the same 4 teams, 5 teams every year, that's only going to help their recruiting. That's only going to distance them. That's going to put them in a situation where you're seeing the same teams over and over and over. And it takes them to the top where if you're a recruit, you're going to say, okay, where do I want to play? Oh, do I want to go to Florida State? Dude, did you see them play? They're awful. Okay. Well, who else is nearby? Clemson? Oh, yeah, they're in the playoffs every year. I'll go there. It's very easy to recruit now because any coach can just go in and say, I've been in the playoff 4 times. Do you want to get extra exposure and get drafted by the NFL? You want to play in the playoffs?
But that also works negatively at you too, because there's some programs that they can say we still send players to the NFL and you can get more playing time to get the exposure compared to you're gonna sit at Alabama or you're gonna sit at Clemson for 3, potentially 4 years, and it's not even a guarantee that you're gonna start. I mean, even if as a quarterback recruit, why would you commit to Oklahoma, knowing that the last 3 years they've had 3 different quarterbacks transfer in that were Heisman contenders? There's no reason why you would want to commit there if you're a quarterback commit.
And you're right, and that gives you some little push for the teams that are on the next level. Because I saw someone that was putting together like the average recruiting ranking classes. I don't know if I sent it to you guys. Maybe we'll talk about it next week whenever we do the early recruiting day. But when you're looking at it, it's the same teams that are at the very top, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. There's a big gap between them and then the rest of the schools. I think it was like they average top 5 classes every year. Then there are some teams that are averaging right around 10, which includes Michigan, Oklahoma, Clemson. But now that Clemson's been in the playoffs 4 years, look at their incoming class. It might be the best class of all time. And they don't get that class if they don't win 2 national championships and be in the playoffs every year. I mean, you could say, okay, well, Florida State's down, so that's going to be a blip. If Dabo keeps getting them into the playoffs, they're going to keep recruiting, and they're going to pass up Alabama in recruiting, and that's where Alabama starts to fall off. Alabama, people keep saying, and this gets into our next topic, the best college coaches of all time. ESPN put together a list. We mentioned it earlier in the show. There were 2 things that stood out to me, Matt. They have Nick Saban number 2. Why? Is he a good coach?
LSU, Alabama, national championships in a relatively modern era. I think you put him in there.
But how long was he at LSU?
Long enough to win a national championship.
But this is my thing against him, because if you're looking at that year, let me look because I need to get my stats right. But here's my knock against him. He has been coaching with number 1 talent. Whenever he plays a team that has equal or greater talent, he loses. Can't beat Clemson now that they've been recruiting better. Can't beat LSU now. I think someone put together that whenever he has those schools or whenever he has that talent, that he's able to win. Whenever he doesn't get that recruiting talent, he doesn't win. So is he great? Look in the NFL. That's equal talent. He couldn't win. Didn't make it to the playoffs. He was out after what 2 years, 1 year?
But use this too. How often is his staff getting poached for other positions? When you have the level of turnover that he has, coaching-wise, that has to affect you too. That you're not keeping coordinators, you're not holding people around. And I know that the general thought is, as the head coach, you want to develop your assistants so that they're prepared to step into other roles and move on to bigger positions. But it's like as soon as you get fired, we joke about it on our show. You get fired, you go to Saban boot camp, and it rehabilitates your career, and you move on. What other coach in this era do you say, they go there and they're able to like completely be a failure, spend time on his staff, and then come out on the other side and be, oh, he's a good coach again.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing something.
Well, if you're looking at it in terms of coaches, then yeah, you have a point and I really can't knock it. But if you're looking in terms of, has he been great? He was at LSU for 5 years. They had double-digit wins twice. The national championship year, which was 2003. And to me, I think that was the year that they lucked out, right? They didn't play USC. So there's an asterisk beside that one because I think Nick Saban got lucky. Because you played, I think if you're looking at, I'll have to look up the national championships. I don't think they were unanimous. You always make fun of Michigan because of the 1997.
Oh, you mean the year Scott Frost won a national championship?
Is that where you're going to go with that?
It was Scott Frost and Tom Osborne's team. Yeah.
Because if you look at the actual list of like recognized national championships, the NCAA has like a bunch of selectors that they pick. And for a lot of them, like they call the 1997 Michigans, as we're talking about, a split championship. Michigan got 3 of the 4 major selectors. So they would be the national championship if the NCAA decided to cut it off. If you look at 2003, LSU got 2, USC got 2. If anything, that's more of a split championship than 1997 in the eyes of the NCAA. So a lot of people claim, well, Nick Saban won that because that was the BCS game. USC didn't get to play in that game because they picked Oklahoma, and even Oklahoma still won one of the computer polls or whatever, so they could claim it if they really wanted to. But USC, they took Michigan in the Rose Bowl down, which Michigan was ranked number 4. So if they had a playoff that year, you would have had USC beat Michigan. USC would have played LSU for the national championship. I don't know if Nick Saban could have got that done. And then he gets to Alabama, 3 national championships. One was a rematch with LSU again. Like some of his national championships he's backed into. So yeah, sure, he's won 2 playoffs, but so has Dabo. And to have him so high, it just, to me, it's baffling. Because like you said, he won at 2 schools. Guess who else won at 2 schools? Urban Meyer. Guess who else has... Urban Meyer's winning percentage, Matt, is .853. That's ridiculous. That's almost, 100 points higher?
You're talking about Nick Saban's recruiting classes. What kind of recruiting classes is Urban Meyer bringing?
At Florida, he didn't have number 1 for a while. I mean, Matt, he brought in Tim Tebow.
When he started buying all those murderers to come in, they turned a corner.
But I'm looking at, Matt, they're talking about the best college coaches of all time. Why is Nick Saban getting a pass for his Michigan State years where he didn't win anything? Then his winning percentage is .785. He's a good almost 100 points behind Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer won at Bowling Green. He won at Utah. He won at Florida. He won at Ohio State. Nick Saban can't say that. He had a losing record in the NFL. He didn't win anything at Michigan State. Why is he considered the best ever? So if you're looking at the best ever and you're just using the multiple championships at 2 schools, I mean, hell, you got to give it to Urban Meyer. They have him below Dabo Swinney, I believe, in the list. I have the active coaches up where they have Nick Saban 2, Dabo Swinney 31, Chris Peterson 58. It's like, why?
But I would say as far as with Dabo, the Dabo one doesn't make sense at all. Because, yes, he's had recent success, but that doesn't show long-term success. And I think with Saban, when you look at the way that he's won with his defense. He's won with more traditional eye set systems. When his teams were in the spread, when he had Kiffin as the offensive coordinator, that was where things it was after he really started complaining about the rule changes. Teams started going more up tempo. Auburn beat him in the Iron Bowl, and he was saying that the tempo was and the RPOs were an unfair advantage. So what did he do? He went and got Kiffin and completely just steamrolled people. And the year that he lost the national championship was when him and Kiffin parted ways, and Kiffin went to Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, that's where, you're not wrong, but that's where you're looking at when you said about Dabo. Dabo has a higher winning percentage than Nick Saban because of how bad his previous stops were. So you can't say, well, Dabo had an awful first couple of years. Nick Saban adjusted. It's like, okay, yeah, he adjusted. He got some wins. Like he was at LSU when Alabama was down. He was at Alabama whenever most of the other schools in the SEC was down. He pretty much resuscitated the SEC there after a lot of their scandals or whatever. Alabama was on sanctions. He lost to, who did he lose to his first year? ULM at Alabama? Come on, why is he losing to ULM? That makes zero sense. So it's a stupid list. I hate it because they don't have any actual hard numbers. You have some coaches like Bo Schembechler. Bo Schembechler's really high. And to me, it's why? He was awful in bowl games. Do you think that he should have been a top 20 coach? No. Because of what? He had a high win percentage? It's not higher than Urban Meyer. Why is he ahead of Urban Meyer? There's zero reason to put Bo Schembechler ahead of Urban Meyer. Then they had the one Michigan coach that should have been high on the list, Fielding Yost. They had him way down on the list, I think. He had the point of mission. He won 4 national championships in a row. If Nick Saban was winning 4 national championships in a row, and if you're saying list of all time, I think he outscored opponents 300 something to nothing that one season. It's how are you going to say it's an all-time list, but then the coaches that actually dominated in their early years, you have lower on the list than guys that didn't win anything. So I thought it was dumb. I know you figured to give us something to talk about. Do you have any other thoughts on it?
No, that was you hit on a lot of the stuff. You must have been reading my mind because that was kind of the stuff that I was thinking of as well.
Yeah, I think they did it just for clicks. They figured, we'll put the 2 Alabama guys at the top because that will get people to decide against it. We're not going to show any criteria because, like I said, are you weighting wins? Are you looking at conference wins or something? Are you doing national championships? Because, yeah, I knocked Bo Schembechler. If Michigan wanted to, they could claim 2 national championships with him. 1973, because the Big Ten only sent one team to a bowl game. They tied Ohio State. Ohio State, I think, won the Rose Bowl because the Big Ten coaches or ADs picked Ohio State to go, but some selectors still picked Michigan as a national champ because I think they missed a field goal at the end, so they could have won the game. There was no overtime, so, he could clearly claim that one. And then you have 85, which I think went to a team that had 1 loss. Michigan had 1 loss that year and a tie, I think. So there's a lot of weird things where now you don't have ties anymore. So it makes it a little bit tougher when you're looking at these past coaches. Some guys, there's been undefeated teams that have 3 ties. How do you weigh that? If they would have won all 3 of them, that's a national championship year. You don't know if they could win a tie. Is it a missed field goal? Who knows? So I think it's a little weird to put that together unless you're looking at, okay, we're going to look at national championships. We're going to look at this and we're going to look at this. But when they didn't do any of that, it's like, what'd you do? Just pick out your favorite coaches? Because I have the winning percentages up right now. Urban Meyer's pretty much at the top. You have Newt Rockne. He's up there. I know he won a bunch of national championships. His winning percentage is ridiculous. It's okay, cool. Let's just throw a list together. So let's see what else I have on the thing. We talked about Florida State. Didn't hire Bob Stoops, so we already hit on that. You have anything for the final bill, Matt?
Just, I was surprised that Norvell was able to pull his old offensive coordinator from Auburn back. And so we get that Wing T connection coming to Tallahassee. But then Chad Morris fired at Arkansas and ends up at Auburn as the offensive coordinator. So you get those two wing T minds. I'm curious to see. And I think Auburn's offense will be even better next year, having both of those guys collaborating together because they have similar style of offenses.
Yeah, it's going to be a different year because you're getting into the point where it's like, what, the second or third year they have the early signing period? So you have a lot of coaching movements. There's rumors now that LSU's defensive coordinator might take the UNLV job. I don't know if that's solid or not. And like you said, or I think we mentioned it, Scott from Clemson, he's taking the USF job. So you have these coaches that are in the playoffs. I think Scott said is he coaching in the playoffs?
I believe he is. He's going to do double duty.
When has that worked out? Like, I don't know if there's any situation where you're getting your job handed to you and you have to recruit at a high level. I don't think you're going to be able to recruit because of this early signing period and focus on the national championship. I'm sorry.
Well, he may have looked at it. This may be a situation where USF is in such a crappy spot that are they even in a bowl this year?
I don't know. They had Charlie Strong. They let him go.
I'm not thinking that they were bowl eligible. If they're not bowl eligible, then you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on your team that is in a bowl. And if their recruiting classes is bad because they've had the poor record and everything else, that may give you the wiggle room to say, you know what, I'm going to finish with my team and go out. Because he was a longtime coordinator. He's been with Dabo since Dabo was an interim coach. So mark it down that this is a huge loss for him. That he hasn't had to go through the transitions like people like Norvell have had to at Memphis, and having coordinators plucked, and having guys like Saban that's having coordinators taken from him all the time and having to replace them. Even Franklin has had to replace several coordinators over the last couple of years. It's not easy going back and forth with that. So I want to see how they replace him and what that offense looks like, especially for the development of Trevor Lawrence, who's now going to have to go into a different system.
Yeah, it's a different type of feel because I think you have a lot more coordinators taking jobs, at least in past. A lot of them didn't make that decision until after the bowl game. Now they're getting hired early and announced. And like I said, I just don't think they're going to be able to focus on it. So until a team comes out and they have one of those coaches that took a job and isn't like half out the door, I know the head coach is probably going to have some say about that. And yeah, he's been there forever, so possibly he knows the system and he thinks he can get it done against an Ohio State team that they dominated last time they played. Maybe. I don't know. But the last thing I had was the Heisman ceremony, because I wanted to say that they invited Chase Young, and the Big Ten also put him on the list of players for awards. The guy was suspended for 2 games? He missed 1 or 2. And the Big Ten put out a statement that Michigan State's linebacker wasn't eligible for any awards because he was ineligible for steroids or whatever. So he missed games, so you couldn't vote for him. So how can you vote for Chase Young but not vote for...
Paying that money back.
Yeah, it's the most ridiculous system. Like, I know that he's not going to win because typically it's voters from all around the country. And because they invited both him and Fields, most Midwest guys that might have voted for the Buckeyes players probably split their votes. So I would figure that they're going to finish 3rd and 4th. At least that's what it used to be, where if 2 players were from the same region or the same conference going to the finals, they split votes, they didn't win. So I feel like it's going to be Joe Burrow. I could be wrong. I just don't see either of the Buckeyes getting the West Coast vote, and I don't think Jalen Hurts gets it either. So you have Burrows down there with LSU and the way they've been dominating. They're number 1 now. I would be shocked if it wasn't him. And I think that's where, like, a lot of the Heisman, they're taking the surprise out of it. It's like they try to make it this big display when, it seems like, 10 years ago? And I know some Alabama running backs have run it since. But you have Jonathan Taylor, and hell, I would argue that Dobbins is more important to Ohio State than the quarterback and Chase Young. He put up outrageous numbers.
Negative. It should be Chase Young, and I advocated this back when Peppers was snubbed for his when he. It's nice that he gets to go, and he gets to hang out in New York, but just like I thought Peppers helped Michigan's defense, I think Young single-handedly wrecked teams at the end of the year for Ohio State, and he crushed Penn State. Penn State couldn't do anything against him. They just kept letting him just run right by and sack the quarterback. He must have had 35 sacks. I think he meant a lot more, and he put Ohio State's offense in some really good spots because of all of the defensive havoc that he wrecked. But it's becoming more of an offensive reward, and it's going to the best quarterback on the best team, and not taking away from Burrow, because I think he's going to be deserving with the way that he's played this year. But I think Young would deserve it just as much.
But I'm saying just take out the quarterbacks. Well, I mean, Chase Young, yeah, he's getting into, he's defensive. Only one defender's ever won it, Charles Woodson, and he also returned punts. So he had the big touchdown punt return against Ohio State to win that game. Chase Young doesn't have that. Yeah, he puts up the stats on defense, but it's like when they had Ndamukong Suh. When you don't have the flashy touchdowns and stuff for them to show, they're not going to pick you. The only reason that even, like, you can go back to the other Michigan guy that won it, Desmond Howard, the wide receiver. The only reason those guys won it is because they were also returning punts and kicks for touchdowns. I mean, hell, that was Desmond's specialty. He did it in the Super Bowl. He was Super Bowl MVP because of the kickoff return, I believe, in the second half. So you have guys that make impact. No defender can really do that unless they're getting like multiple interceptions for touchdowns and things like that. Those guys just don't have it. But 10 years ago, Jonathan Taylor has 1,900 yards rushing, 21 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins, 1,800 yards rushing, 20 touchdowns. And even Chuba Hubbard at Oklahoma State, I didn't realize he was number one. He's over 1,900 with 21 touchdowns. 10 years ago, the running back would have at least been invited. I know Oklahoma State doesn't have the wins, but what you're looking at, what Taylor did for Wisconsin, he's easily more important than any of those quarterbacks from those other teams. LSU has been winning on defense for how many years? Yeah, they got a quarterback that can sling it, gets them some wins, but is he more important than Jonathan Taylor? If you take him away, is Wisconsin 7-5? I mean, they were just as awful last year as LSU. I know if they didn't beat Ohio State, I think if they would have beat Ohio State, maybe in the Big Ten championship game, maybe he gets invited. But still, at some point you have to look at the other positions and what they're doing instead of just inviting quarterbacks. And so I know defenders aren't going to get a look. You'll get the Chase Young invite. You'll get the Jabril Peppers invite. But Peppers still had the kick returns and the punt returns too. And so that might have been why he got the invite, because his defensive stats weren't there. Like you said, he talked about impact, but at some point you can't just keep inviting only the quarterbacks from the top three teams. People aren't going to watch. They don't care. It's not the best quarterback award. They already have that. Invite a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, and get a good mix and make it suspenseful. There's no suspense. I think if you look at the odds, it goes back the last 5 or 10 years. I think Vegas had the odds right almost every time. That's my final thought. You have anything else?
Check out our website, southboundsports.com. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good holiday gear.
Yeah, check that out. Like I said, we'll probably be doing a bull pick'em. My voice is just getting destroyed right now. So definitely go to southboundsports.com. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.